I paid for a wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. That was the first sentence I said out loud after I read the email that shattered me. My name is Miriam Smith. I'm 52 years old, and my daughter, my only child, blocked me from her wedding. It still sounds absurd when I say it. A mother locked out of a wedding she fully paid for. I covered everything: the venue, the catering, the photographer, even her dress fitting. I told myself it was my way of showing love, of being useful. Maybe I thought money could patch what words had failed to heal between us. Laura's been engaged to Daniel for 2 years. They're not wealthy. Daniel works long hours as an engineer, and Laura's been freelancing as a designer ever since she quit her office job. I wanted to help them start their life without debt hanging over them. When they announced the engagement, I remember hugging Laura and whispering, "Let me handle the wedding. I owe you that much." She didn't hug me back. She just smiled politely and said, "If you want." That if should have warned me. But mothers don't listen to warnings about their children. We hear only what we want to hear. 2 months later, the planning was in full swing. The invitations were elegant, the theme tasteful. I stayed out of the small decisions, flowers, tablecloths, all that, but I called the planner one afternoon to ask if we could add my brother Martin to the guest list. He'd been like an uncle to Laura growing up. I thought it would be a sweet surprise. The planner's tone shifted immediately. "Mrs. Smith," he said, his voice thin and nervous, "the guest list, it's already finalized." I laughed softly. "Oh, that's fine. Just one seat. I'll cover any extra costs." Silence. Then quietly, "I'll send you the list, ma'am. Perhaps it's best you look." When the email arrived, I scrolled casually until my eyes stopped cold. Laura Smith, Daniel Ross, guests, 124 names, but not mine, not Peter's. I thought maybe there'd been a formatting error, so I pressed Ctrl+F and typed Miriam. Nothing. Smith. Still nothing. I scrolled again, my stomach turning. Maybe she forgot, I whispered to myself, though even saying it out loud sounded ridiculous. I called the planner back, trying to keep my voice steady. Why aren't my husband and I on this list?" He hesitated again. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Ms. Lara requested specific security measures at the venue to ensure certain guests would not attempt to enter." "Certain guests?" I repeated. "Yes, ma'am. You and Mr. Smith were explicitly listed." For a moment, all sound dropped out of the world. He forwarded the emails. I opened them. There, in black and white, was my daughter's name and her message. Under no circumstances should Miriam or Peter Smith be allowed into the venue. Higher security if necessary. I stared at that line for a full minute, as if it were a language I couldn't translate. Then the shaking began, first in my hands, then my chest. Peter came into the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. "Eve, what's wrong?" I couldn't answer. I just handed him my phone. I watched his face change as he read. His brow furrowed, then hardened. "She actually wrote this?" I nodded, unable to speak. He exhaled slowly, placing the phone down like it might explode. "I told you she resented you for the divorce. She never forgave you for remarrying." "That was 12 years ago," I whispered. "She was 16. She said she understood." Peter's voice softened. "She said it. That doesn't mean she meant it." I turned away, unable to hold back tears. The years replayed in flashes. Lara crying in her childhood bedroom when her father moved out. Me kneeling beside her, promising everything would still be okay. Later, when I met Peter, she acted polite but distant, never cruel, just cold. I thought she'd grown out of it. Apparently she hadn't. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at that email thread again. I must have reread it 20 times, hoping it would change. Maybe I'd misread the sender. Maybe it was some cruel misunderstanding. But every time I reached the line, "under no circumstances," my stomach twisted tighter. I thought of all the things I'd done for her. The late-night drives to pick her up after college parties. The rent I paid when she lost her job. The bills I covered when she said freelance work was slow. None of it mattered. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being her mother and started being her enemy. The next morning, I tried to call her, straight to voicemail. "Lara, it's Mom. Please call me back. I just need to understand what's happening." No answer. I left 3 more messages that day, each one shorter, each one shakier. By evening, Peter put his hand over mine and said, "You won't get peace staring at that phone." He was right, but I couldn't let it go. I needed to see her face when she told me why. The following afternoon, I got in the car and drove to her apartment. I rehearsed everything I'd say, calm, rational, motherly. I told myself I'd listen before speaking, that we'd talk like adults. When she opened the door, all of that vanished. She looked at me the way people look at strangers knocking during dinner. "What do you want, Mom?" I swallowed the sting in my throat. "Why am I not on your guest list?" Her expression didn't change. "Because I don't want you there." My heart clenched. "Laura, what did I do that was so unforgivable?" She crossed her arms. "You wouldn't understand." "Then help me understand," my voice cracked. "I paid for this wedding. I thought—" She cut me off sharply. "Exactly. You paid for it. You wanted control, as always. This is my day, not your chance to prove you're the perfect mother." I stared at her, stunned. "Is that what you think this is about?" Her voice turned icy. "I don't think, Mom. I know." I stood there in her doorway, realizing the distance between us wasn't measured in miles or years, but in walls I hadn't even seen her building. "Laura," I whispered, "whatever I've done, I never stopped loving you." She laughed under her breath. "Then do me one favor. Love me from far away." The door closed softly, but it sounded like thunder. That night, as I drove home through the quiet streets, I told myself I wouldn't cry. But tears came anyway, slow, exhausted tears that tasted like years of trying too hard. When I got home, Peter was waiting on the porch. He didn't ask what happened. He just opened his arms, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself collapse. Somewhere deep down, between the heartbreak and disbelief, a thought began to take root. Dark, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. If she doesn't want me at her wedding, maybe she won't have a wedding at all. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding head. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Laura's face at the doorway, calm, cold, and certain that she didn't need me. Peter brewed coffee in silence. He didn't ask if I was okay. He already knew the answer. "I should go talk to her again," I said, breaking the quiet. "There must be a reason she—" He cut in gently but firmly. "Eve, you already did." "I know, but maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I said something wrong. Stop blaming yourself." "But that's what mothers do, isn't it? We blame ourselves. If a child hates you, it must mean you failed somewhere." By noon, I couldn't sit still anymore. I grabbed my keys and left before Peter could stop me. I told myself I was just going to drop off a note. Something simple, like, "I'm sorry if I hurt you. Let's talk when you're ready." But deep down, I knew I wanted to see her again. I wanted to fix it. When she opened the door this time, there was no surprise. She didn't even ask why I was there. She just sighed. "Mom, I told you not to come back." I tried to steady my voice. "Laura, please, I just need to understand. What did I do that made you hate me this much?" Her lips curled into a tight, bitter smile. "You really don't remember?" I shook my head slowly. "If I did, I wouldn't be here begging you to explain." That's when she let it all out. "You never had my back," she began. "Not when I needed you, not when everyone made me feel small." She started pacing, her tone rising with every word. "You always chose other people over me. First Dad, then Peter. Every time I tried to talk, you shut me down or took someone else's side." I was stunned. "That's not true." "Oh, really?" she snapped. "What about when I got suspended in high school? You sided with the principal instead of asking what really happened." "Because you threw a chair at a teacher," I blurted out before I could stop myself. Her eyes flared. "He called me broken. You think that's okay?" I froze. I'd never known that. Back then, the school called it verbal misbehavior. I thought it was just teenage rebellion. Lara took a shaky breath and went on. "When Dad left, you promised me nothing would change. But everything changed. You married a stranger and acted like we were supposed to be some perfect family. You paraded Peter and his parents around like replacements." "They weren't replacements," I whispered. "They were to me," she shot back. "You didn't even ask how I felt. You just moved on." I stepped closer. "Lara, that's not fair. I did what I thought was best for both of us." "No," she said, her voice trembling. "You did what was best for you." There it was, the wound that never healed. Every word she said sliced through me, not because it was cruel, but because it was partly true. I had moved on faster than she could. I thought giving her a normal life again would help. I didn't see that it made her feel replaced. I tried to speak, but my throat tightened. "I made mistakes, Lara, but I never stopped loving you." "Love isn't enough, Mom," she said flatly. "You can't love someone and keep breaking them." She turned away, and something inside me cracked open. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was twisting everything, but I couldn't, because in her eyes she wasn't wrong. When she finally looked back at me, her tone had changed. Quieter now, but sharper. You don't get to show up and pretend to care after all these years. You think paying for my wedding makes up for the past? It doesn't. I don't need your money. I don't need your approval. I don't need you. Her words hit like glass shattering. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. Then why let me pay for it at all? I asked, barely above a whisper. For the first time, she hesitated. Because saying no would have started another fight. You always get your way eventually. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, she said, almost gently, Please, Mom, just don't come. It'll be easier for both of us. I stood frozen at the threshold, realizing I'd lost her long before this conversation. The wedding was just the final proof. Lara, I said softly, someday you'll understand why I tried so hard. She shook her head. I already do. You tried for yourself, not for me. And then, the soft click of the door closing again. I don't remember driving home. My hands were on the wheel, but my mind was back at that door, replaying every sentence, every tear I refused to let fall in front of her. When I got home, Peter was sitting on the porch steps, waiting like before. He didn't ask. I didn't speak. We just sat there as dusk settled, two people bound by silence and grief. Finally, he said quietly, She's made her choice. You need to make yours. I stared out into the streetlights. What choice? He looked at me, his voice firm but kind, to stop being the villain in her story. I turned to him, confused. She keeps painting you as the bad guy, he continued. You can't change her version, but you can stop funding it. Those words echoed in my head long after he went inside. That night, I stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through my tears. She didn't want me there. She didn't even want me to exist in her version of happiness. Fine. If that's what she wanted, maybe it was time she learned what it meant to cut someone out completely. The next morning, I made a decision. A quiet, devastating decision that would change everything. The sun had barely risen when I opened my laptop and scrolled through my email drafts. My finger hovered over the one addressed to the wedding venue manager, the same man who'd called me such a generous mother just weeks ago. I read my own words one last time before hitting send. Please proceed with the full cancellation of the Smith-Ross wedding. All payments are withdrawn. Do not release the venue or arrangements to any party associated with the event. It was done. No drama, no threats, just one click. And yet the moment I pressed send, my chest felt heavy, like the air had thickened around me. Peter found me sitting at the kitchen counter, coffee untouched. You really did it? He asked. I nodded. I had to. I won't keep paying for a celebration I'm banned from. He stared at me for a long moment. Then slowly he said, She'll come for you. I know, I replied. Let her. By noon, the calls started. First from the venue, then the wedding planner, then a panicked message from Daniel. Each voice was the same, confused, shocked, begging for clarification. Mrs. Smith, this is so sudden. Is there an emergency? The bride isn't aware. She'll find out soon enough, I said calmly. I hung up before they could say more. Peter watched from across the table, concern etched on his face. Eve, are you sure this is about respect and not revenge? I met his eyes. Does it matter? By the evening, the storm hit. The security camera at the front gate buzzed, and there she was, Lara. Her face was red, eyes wild, hair a tangled mess. She pounded on the metal gate with both fists. Mom, open this damn gate! I stood behind the curtains, my body trembling, even as my expression stayed blank. Mom, I know you're in there. You think this is funny? Peter stepped closer, whispering, Eve, don't. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, listening. Lara's voice cracked through the speaker. You ruined everything. Do you even know what you've done? You humiliated me in front of everyone. Her voice was half fury, half desperation, a mix only she could pull off. Finally, when she realized I wasn't coming out, she screamed, You're pathetic! I wish you'd just disappear from my life for good. And then, silence. I sank into the couch, my hands shaking. The house felt too quiet after her voice vanished. Peter rubbed my shoulders gently. You did the right thing. I turned to him, my voice small. Did I? Because it doesn't feel like it. He sighed. She used you, Eve. You were her wallet, not her mother. I wanted to believe that, but every word she'd shouted still clung to my skin like smoke. That night, I sat in my bedroom, lights off, staring at my reflection in the mirror. For years, I'd told myself I was a strong mother, resilient, patient, forgiving. But the woman in that reflection didn't look strong. She looked tired. Maybe Laura was right. Maybe my love had always come with control, the kind of control that smothered instead of nurtured. But then again, what was a mother supposed to do when her own child turned into a stranger? 2 days later, the family calls began. First, my parents. "Miriam, you didn't really cancel the wedding, did you?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "I did." "For heaven's sake, that's cruel. She's your daughter." "She made her choice," I said quietly. "I made mine." My father chimed in, his tone sharp. "We don't abandon our children, Miriam, no matter what." I swallowed hard. "And what about when our children abandon us?" They didn't have an answer. After the third call, I stopped answering altogether. Every message said the same thing. "You went too far." Maybe they were right, but no one had seen the emails, the look in Laura's eyes, the venom in her voice. No one understood what it felt like to be erased from your own daughter's life, and then be asked to keep paying for it. Later that week, a delivery arrived, a box addressed to E. Smith. Inside was the wedding invitation I'd paid for. White silk envelope, gold embossing. At the bottom, in perfect calligraphy, it read, "Together with their families, Laura and Daniel." I ran my fingers over the words "their families" until my nails left marks. I whispered to the empty room, "You made sure I wasn't one of them." And then slowly I tore the invitation in half. That night I dreamed of Laura as a child again, 5 years old, running through the backyard with her tiny hands covered in paint. She had looked up at me with that toothy grin and shouted, "Mommy, look, I made a rainbow." Back then, she believed I could fix anything. Scraped knees, broken toys, scary storms. But now I couldn't even fix the mess we'd become. When I woke the next morning, I found Peter already dressed for work. He kissed my forehead. "You don't have to be strong today," he said. "Just rest." I nodded. But as soon as he left, I opened my laptop again and stared at the email thread with the venue manager. In the back of my mind, a voice whispered, "She'll never forgive you for this." Another voice, quieter but sharper, replied, "She already hadn't." For the rest of that week, I didn't leave the house. The phone rang constantly. Unknown numbers, angry relatives, vendors trying to confirm cancellations. I ignored every call. Then, one evening, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Daniel standing there, holding a box of flowers and looking uncertain. When I opened the door, he said softly, "Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry about all this, but she's not okay. She's been breaking down nonstop." I crossed my arms. "Did she tell you she banned me?" He nodded slowly. "She did. I told her she shouldn't have. But you know Laura, once she decides something, she destroys it," I finished for him. He didn't deny it. I'll try to talk to her," he said awkwardly. "Please, just don't do anything more drastic." I gave him a small, sad smile. "Daniel, the most drastic thing I've done is stop pretending." He didn't have a reply. After he left, I stood by the window again, watching his car fade into the distance. The sky outside was gray and heavy, the kind that promised rain. I whispered to the quiet, "You wanted a wedding without me, Laura. Now you have neither." And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I'd done something terrible or something necessary. 3 days later, I woke to a string of missed calls, 10 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 1 from my mother. My heart already knew what it was about before I even checked the messages. The first voicemail was the wedding planner's voice, panicked and shrill. "Mrs. Smith, please call me back. The decorators and caterers can't get into the venue. The staff say it's been canceled. The bride is furious. I need confirmation before everything collapses." The next one was Daniel. His tone was tight, almost pleading. "Miriam, please, she's losing it. Everyone's here, and there's no wedding. Can you at least talk to her?" And then my mother's, "Miriam, dear, whatever's happened, fix it before it's too late." I put the phone down and walked to the window. Outside, the morning light was cruelly bright, the kind of light that makes everything look cleaner than it feels. I didn't call anyone back. Instead, I poured myself coffee and sat quietly at the kitchen table, letting the silence do what words couldn't. By noon, my parents showed up, unannounced. My mother's eyes were full of worry, my father's full of judgment. "Miriam, you've gone too far," my mother said before she'd even sat down. "She didn't leave me any other choice," I said. "She's your child," my father barked. "You don't destroy your child's wedding." I met his gaze, and she destroyed my dignity. My father's lips tightened, but my mother spoke softly. "You could have waited. Talked to her again. Tried to mend things." "She didn't want to talk," I said. "She wanted to erase me." They exchanged a look. Pity, disappointment. I couldn't tell which. You'll regret this, Eve, my father said finally. I looked down at my coffee cup. I already do. That evening, the storm arrived. Not from the sky, but from the street. Laura. The sound of her car screeching into the driveway made Peter and I both jump. Then came the slam of the door, the footsteps pounding up the path. The gate buzzer went off. Once, twice, 3 times in furious succession. Miriam, she screamed, voice cracking. Open the gate! I stayed on the couch, frozen. Peter moved toward the window. She's hysterical, he whispered. Let her be, I said. He looked at me like I'd turned to stone. She's still your daughter. I know, I murmured. That's why this hurts. Through the intercom, her voice echoed. High, broken, almost feral. You humiliated me. Do you know what people are saying? Guests showed up to an empty venue. The florist walked out, the band left. Daniel's parents think I'm insane. I closed my eyes. Her words sliced deep, but I forced myself to stay still. Every instinct screamed to open that door, to hold her, to say I was sorry. But I'd said sorry too many times before. She had built a life where I was the villain, and every apology just reinforced that role. After 15 minutes of screaming, she finally stopped. I heard a small sob through the speaker. Mama! My heart lurched. I hadn't heard her call me that since she was 12. I turned to the door, my hand trembling on the handle. Peter shook his head slightly. Don't, he whispered. So I didn't. I stood there, inches away, while my daughter cried on the other side of a gate I'd locked myself. When the sobbing stopped, her voice hardened again. You'll regret this, Mom. You always do. Then her footsteps faded. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying her voice in my head, the cracks between the anger. Mama. It haunted me like a ghost that refused to leave. Peter tried to comfort me. She'll calm down. She'll realize what she's done. But I knew better. When Laura burned bridges, she didn't rebuild them. She salted the ashes. The next morning, I opened social media out of habit and immediately wished I hadn't. There it was, a long, furious post from Laura. Imagine your own mother canceling your wedding just to prove she's right. I should have known money always came with strings. I don't have a mother anymore, just a woman who wanted control. Hundreds of comments followed. Some strangers called me selfish. Others told her to move on. But it wasn't the comments that hurt. It was the word she used. Mother. She still used it, but stripped of all warmth. A few days later, Daniel came by again. He looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. She's not eating, he said quietly. She keeps replaying what happened. She blames herself, then blames you, then me. It's bad. I nodded numbly. She always turns pain into anger. He hesitated. She's talking about moving away, starting over somewhere else. A strange emptiness filled my chest. Maybe that's for the best, I said. He looked at me, a mix of pity and confusion. Do you even want to fix this, Miriam? I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know. After he left, I wandered into the living room and noticed something I hadn't seen before. Lara's old photo album on the shelf, dust-covered, untouched for years. I sat down and opened it. There she was, a child again, smiling through missing teeth, standing beside me in her first dance recital dress. I remembered how proud I was that day, how we went out for ice cream afterward, and she said, Mom, when I get married, will you dance with me? I closed the album, the air catching in my throat. That promise had lived inside me all these years, and now there wouldn't even be music. Peter found me there, the album open on my lap. He knelt beside me, placing a hand on my knee. She's still your daughter, he whispered, even if she's wrong. I know, I said softly, but right now, I don't know how to love her without losing myself. He nodded, understanding. Then don't, not yet. That night, I went outside and stood by the gate she'd pounded on days before. The marks of her fists were still faintly visible, small dents on the metal. I ran my fingers over them, feeling every ridge. I didn't do this to hurt you, I whispered into the night. I did it because I couldn't keep being invisible. The wind didn't answer, but for the first time in a long time, I felt still. And that stillness, painful as it was, felt like the first honest moment I'd had in years. 2 weeks passed. The silence between Lara and me was complete, thick, suffocating, and oddly peaceful at the same time. No calls, no messages, no angry knocks at the gate. The world moved on, but inside me, everything had stopped. Peter tried to fill the quiet with small talk. News about work, dinner plans, a new series we could watch. But every sound just reminded me of what wasn't there. The absence of Lara had become its own kind of noise. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail. But something, a strange, nervous intuition, made me answer. Hello? Mrs. Smith, it's Daniel. My breath caught. For a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he was calling to say Lara wanted to talk, that she was ready to mend things. That hope was cruel. His tone was gentle but hesitant. She's not doing well. We met that evening at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. I arrived early, half hoping she'd be there too. But when Daniel walked in alone, I already knew she wouldn't be. He sat across from me, fidgeting with his hands. He looked older, thinner, exhaustion carved into every movement. Is she okay? I asked softly. He exhaled. She's alive, but she's angry, and she's unraveling. My stomach turned. Unraveling how? He hesitated. She's been smashing things, screaming at people. She blames everyone. Me, you, even her friends. I moved out 2 weeks ago. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. You left her? He looked down. I had to. She threw a vase at me during an argument. Said I ruined her life. I still love her, but I can't live like that. The restaurant noise faded around us. Only the clinking of a spoon and my heartbeat remained. Daniel's eyes glistened. She needs help, Mrs. Smith. Real help. She's not evil. She's just lost. I don't think she even knows why she hates you anymore. I swallowed hard. Because I failed her. He shook his head. No, because she never learned how to forgive. I stared at the candle between us, its small flame trembling with each breath of air. I did try to help her once, I said. When she was 16, she had these angry outbursts, these walls. I sent her to therapy back then. She went twice and refused to go again. Daniel nodded. She told me that story. Said you were trying to fix her instead of listening. I wasn't trying to fix her, I whispered. I was trying to keep her from breaking. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel leaned forward. That's why I called you. I don't know who else can reach her now. She won't listen to me. She won't listen to anyone. My throat tightened. She doesn't want me near her. She made that very clear. I know, he said softly, but you're still her mother, even when she hates you. Those words hit harder than I expected, even when she hates you. Daniel continued, voice heavy with guilt. I also wanted to apologize for how I treated you before the wedding. Lara convinced me that you were manipulative, controlling, cold. I believed her. I shouldn't have. He looked at me with genuine regret. She told me things that weren't true, and I let her. I didn't realize how twisted her anger had become until it turned on me. I tried to smile, but it came out brittle. You don't need to apologize, Daniel. You loved her. You believed her. That's what love does. He shook his head. Love shouldn't blind you. And it did me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded photograph. It was of Lara, maybe 5 years old, sitting on a picnic blanket, paint smeared on her cheeks. The same photo I kept in the old album at home. She gave this to me when we got engaged, he said quietly. Said it reminded her of when she was happy. I think she wants that version of herself back. She just doesn't know how. My eyes burned. I traced the edges of the photo with my finger. She used to call that her rainbow day. She said we made the sky brighter that afternoon. Daniel smiled faintly. She's still that little girl somewhere, but she's drowning in everything else she built around her. He paused before speaking again, this time with quiet urgency. Mrs. Smith, she's not seeing anyone. No therapist, no friends, she's isolated. Please, even if she screams, even if she slams the door, please try one more time. I looked at him, torn between fear and guilt. If she shuts me out again, I don't think I can take it. Then don't go as her mother, he said. Go as someone who refuses to give up on her. I nodded slowly, unable to answer. When I got home that night, Peter was sitting in the living room, reading the news on his tablet. How was dinner? He asked without looking up. I hesitated. It wasn't dinner, it was a confession. He looked up puzzled. Daniel? Yes. I told him everything. The anger, the fights, the vase, the apology. By the time I finished, Peter's expression had softened. He's right, Peter said finally. She's lost, and you're still the only one she listens to, even if she pretends not to. I leaned back on the couch, exhausted. I don't know if I have the strength left. He reached for my hand. You don't need strength, Eve. You just need grace. Later that night, I sat by the window again, looking out at the quiet street. The house next door had their lights on, a family laughing, silhouettes dancing in the living room. I used to imagine Lara's wedding day would look like that. Warm, chaotic, full of joy. Instead, her life, our life, had turned into silence and ashes. Still, as I watched the flicker of laughter through that window, I whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll try again." Not for revenge, not for pride, but because even broken mothers still want to believe their daughters can heal. The next morning, I stood outside Lara's apartment building, holding my breath. It was a gray, windless morning, the kind that makes everything feel paused, suspended between hope and dread. I had driven there without telling Peter. He would have tried to stop me, and maybe he'd have been right too. But Daniel's words wouldn't leave me alone. She's not evil, she's just lost. I wasn't here as her mother. I was here as someone who refused to stop caring. I pressed the doorbell once. No answer. Again. Still nothing. By the third ring, I started to turn away, until the door creaked open. Lara stood there in an oversized hoodie, eyes puffy, hair unwashed. Her expression flickered between surprise and disgust. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was hoarse, almost fragile beneath the hostility. "I just wanted to see you," I said quietly, "to make sure you're okay." She crossed her arms, a barrier forming instantly. "Why do you care? You've already ruined my life." I stepped closer. "Lara, I didn't cancel your wedding to ruin you. I did it because I couldn't keep pretending you wanted me there." "Pretending?" she scoffed. "You think this is about pretending? You embarrassed me in front of everyone." Her voice rose, but it wasn't rage this time. It was grief, raw and unfiltered. "I spent weeks planning that day, Mom. I wanted everything perfect. And you made it about yourself, like always." Her words hit like old wounds reopening. I took a shaky breath. Maybe I did. Maybe I've made everything about myself because I didn't know how else to keep you close. For a moment, she faltered, a flicker of confusion, maybe even sadness. But then her eyes hardened again. "Stop pretending you care. You only care when you can control things." I swallowed hard. If I wanted control, I wouldn't be standing here asking for forgiveness. She turned away, pacing toward the kitchen. "Forgiveness? You think that fixes anything?" "No," I said softly, "but I think you need someone to stop fighting you long enough for you to hear yourself." She froze, her shoulders trembling. I continued, my voice low. "You're angry at everyone. At me, at Daniel, at life. But anger doesn't protect you, Lara. It just isolates you until you mistake loneliness for strength." "Don't psychoanalyze me," she snapped. But there was no real venom left in it. I took a step closer. "Then let me say this plainly. You need help, not because you're broken, but because you deserve to heal." Her jaw tightened. "You think I need therapy? I know you do, and that's okay." She turned on me, her eyes glistening. "You think I haven't tried? I went once. They told me I had issues with control and abandonment. You know why? Because of you." The accusation hit like lightning, but I didn't flinch. "I know," I whispered. "And that's why I'm here, because I'm willing to carry that blame if it means you start healing from it." Her lip quivered, and for the briefest moment, she looked like that little girl again, the one who used to run to me after nightmares. Then the wall came back. "Just go, Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, I can't do this right now." I nodded slowly. "All right, I'll go." I paused at the doorway. "But before I do, you don't have to forgive me today or ever. I just need you to remember one thing." She didn't look at me. "What?" "You don't have to keep punishing yourself to make your pain make sense." Her breath hitched, but she said nothing. I left quietly. That evening, I sat in the car for almost an hour before driving home. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but I felt something strange in my chest. Not peace, exactly, but a release. Peter was waiting at the kitchen table. He looked up from his coffee when I walked in. "You went," he said softly. I nodded. "How did it go?" I smiled weakly, like trying to hug a thunderstorm. He chuckled sadly. "Did you tell her what you needed to?" "I did. She didn't hear me, but maybe she felt it." Days turned into weeks. No word from Lara. I didn't expect any. Then one morning, while I was watering the plants on the porch, Peter called out from inside. "Eve, you might want to see this." He handed me his phone, an email notification, from Sophie Chen, Lara's best friend from school, the one who used to live next door before her family moved abroad. "Hi, Mrs. Smith. Daniel reached out to me about Lara. I've spoken to her. She's agreed to see a therapist again, voluntarily this time. I don't know what you said to her, but it must have reached something deep. She's fragile, but she's trying. I thought you should know." I read it twice before I realized I was crying. A week later, my mother called. "Lara visited us yesterday," she said gently. "She apologized, Eve. To us, at least. She said she's trying to be better." "Did she mention me?" I asked quietly. There was a pause. "She said she wasn't ready to forgive you, but she didn't sound angry this time." I smiled through the ache. "That's enough." That night, I sat at my desk, writing a letter I'd probably never send. Dear Laura, you don't owe me forgiveness. You never did. I only hope you find the peace that escaped both of us for so long. I love you. From far away, if that's the only way you'll let me. Mom. I folded the letter and tucked it inside the drawer where I kept the torn wedding invitation. As I closed the drawer, I caught my reflection in the mirror, older, softer, and strangely calm. I whispered to the quiet room, love doesn't always fix things. Sometimes it just waits, quietly, stubbornly, for a door to open again. And though I didn't know if that door ever would, I knew this much. Even if she never forgave me, I had finally forgiven myself. Months later, a small white envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, no letter inside, just a single photograph, Lara standing in front of a sunflower field, smiling. On the back, 3 words in her handwriting. Still trying, Mom. I pressed the photo to my chest and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, the silence between us didn't hurt. It just felt alive.